day a child came out to wander, caught a dragonfly inside a jar, fearful when the sky was full of thunder, and tearful at the falling of a star. And the seasons, they go round and round, and the painted ponies go up and down. We're captive on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came, and go round and round and round in a circle.
When European countries are allowing hundreds of thousands of people to come in, and the U.S. has a ridiculous debate about whether or not we want to allow 10,000 Syrian refugees to come in, the majority of which are women and children, well, what is our responsibility, right? Because a lot of the trouble that's happening in the Middle East right now is our wrongdoing. It's us going in there with our preemptive invasions, with our drone strikes, with our bombings, and all of a sudden we're going to stand back and be like, hey, you know what? We fucked up your countries, but we don't really care. We're going to allow you to deal with it yourself.
But with the same breath, though, this is where I just don't quite follow the logic of what you're saying. With the same breath, you do also acknowledge that there is still a cultural issue with women within those societies.
I'm going to lose my mind. There is a cultural difference. That doesn't mean that their cultural difference is that they're advocates of rape. Okay, there's a difference between believing that men and women are different, and women need to be modest and they need to be conservative. By the way, we have people in our country that feel that way right now. I don't understand what you're trying to say. What's the difference? What's the cultural difference that you're referring to right now?
She literally can't process that he's not going to go on an apology rant for Muslims. She literally can't handle it. This is beautiful. This is really just insane. I can't. I'm just gonna move on. I don't know. Fuck these. Oh my God. Fuck Anna. Like.
So, for example, in Egypt, they did a poll. There was a Pew Research report in Egypt.
I told you he was different. He uses facts. He uses statistics to back up what we already know from observation. Just. Elliot. Thank you. Just, it's like being in a room full of crazy people and then you're not crazy because there's someone else. Yay.
If something, the number is 90% of men believe that women are subservient to men.
That doesn't mean that they believe it's okay to rape women. That's what I'm trying to say.
Are you serious, Anna? You're going to apologize for that viewpoint? Do I have to really, really just dumb this conversation down? No, we're not having a conversation, but I'm pretending we are. Do I have to dumb it down to the point where I explain that thinking women should be subservient to men can lead to a culture where rape is more acceptable? It absolutely will. A woman must submit to a man. So if he gives her an order, if he has a desire, if he wants something, she better submit. She better submit to his word, to his order, to his command. If she's not doing something willfully, but she's doing it because she has to, because as a man, he has authority over her. By our definition of rape, isn't that rape? If these men are used to getting their way with women, not used to receiving a no, and they've been taught that women who do not cover themselves, who are not veiled, are prostitutes, have been taught that these are lesser human beings, and women are already, according to Islam, half of a man. and that's only Muslim women, how much is a non-Muslim woman worth in these cultures? Objectification. Now, this is simple feminism that you can relate to. When a woman or anyone is objectified, it is easier to do bad things to them because you no longer see them as a human being with feelings, with autonomy. There's nothing to hurt. It's an object. And a culture where women must be submissive, they're already thought of as half. And then you add on top of that, these aren't Muslims, so they're not even half. Then it's perfectly acceptable to rape them. They are objects that must submit. How dare this object, this non-human that was designed for me, how dare she not do what I want? I'm going to take it. I'm going to take what I want. How stupid do you have to be to not recognize that? Of course, a culture in which men think women, by default, have to submit to men, of course it's going to lead to a culture where rape is more common. Of course. I've seen feminists point to our society and say that the objectification of women is what leads to this rape culture. Now, I know many people within this space don't think there is rape culture. My personal belief is that over-objectification of any human being leads people to be more okay with doing bad things to them. And I think within these societies, in Muslim societies, once, and I said this in the last video, it is to the extreme. It is objectification magnified by 2,000. And you want to point to our conservatives? Don't defend a culture where women must submit. Don't defend it. The very word Islam means submission. Of course, women and men both must submit to God. But a woman must submit to a man. He is the authority in her life. She has no life. Her existence is only attached to his. He controls her. That's what it means to be submissive. He dominates.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
But you know what? I think if you polled the Christian conservatives in America, you would get probably that same number. So they're a more religious country. That's all. I think that maybe is reflective of they're more religious.
So they're a more religious country. So would you then be willing to say that they are therefore an inferior country? Would you say that? No. You don't. You're like trying to say because it's a more religious country, we should justify how messed up it is. It's a more religious culture. Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. It's a more religious culture, and it's a worse culture. What's your point? It's still a worse culture, whether you call it a religious culture or not. In fact, religion leads to a lot of bad things. Now, I'm gonna backtrack just a second here and say, Christians don't do this. They just don't. I mean, yes, of course you can have Christians who are rapists, but this hasn't happened. There has been no mass rape by Christians, done in this country, done in Germany, or done in any other country. Not like this. Not like this. And certainly not in the name of Christianity, and certainly not justified by anything that you can find in the Bible. Old Testament or New Testament. Yes, there's rape in both. Well, I don't know, I can't say, I actually haven't read the New Testament. Yes, there is rape in the Old Testament, But nowhere does it say to rape women who are not Jewish, not of the tribe. It has very harsh punishments for women who are raped. That's messed up. That's messed up. And if you caught me on that, let's go do a separate video about it. Let's talk about this situation in which, in the religion, there is justification for raping infidels or outsiders, non-believers. And there is a culture of misogyny, pure, unadulterated misogyny, that is not even comparable to what we have here in terms of sexism. Not even close. Not even close. Hey, any feminists watching this? Own it. Own how lucky we are. Really appreciate it. I think every day we should be a little thankful for how lucky we are that we were born in our Western societies. I am truly thankful for it. I hope everyone else is too. Not just women, but men too, I think. We're very lucky.
So, I mean, we took our culture away from the religious fucking crazies in our country. But if you watch that Republican debate last night, they still advocate all that backward shit. They're still against healthcare for poor people. They're still against immigrants. And they're still against gay people. They don't like gay people. They don't want them to have equal rights. They've been dragged kicking and screaming into the 20th century. And now we're in the 21st. They're still in the 1900s. So I just think that when people do that and like, oh, the Pew did a research. Again, it's a different culture. It's more religious, and we're against fundamentalism, right? We're against fundamental religion. I'm against all religion, but especially fundamentalism, which is where this stuff comes from. And again, what we're doing is we're painting with a broad brush a whole culture because of something that happened on New Year's Eve.
I'm just gonna do a little paraphrasing of Sam Harris here.
As you know, I'm concerned about religion in general, but I think we're wise to differentiate specific religious beliefs. And we are, I think, quite encumbered by political correctness and just frank confusion on this front. One problem is that we have this one word, religion. Religion is a nearly useless term. It's a term like sports. Now, there are sports like badminton, and there are sports like Thai boxing. Okay, and they have almost nothing in common apart from breathing. Now, there are sports that are just synonymous with the risk of physical injury or even death. I mean, there's sports that are just synonymous with violence. There is, I'm happy to say, a religion of peace in this world, but it's not Islam. Jainism actually is a religion of peace. Jainism is that the core principle of Jainism is nonviolence. The crazier you get as a Jain, the less we have to worry about you. Notice, the problem is not religious extremism, okay, because extremism is not a problem if your core beliefs are truly nonviolent. The problem isn't fundamentalism, which you often hear this said. These are euphemisms. I mean, the only problem with Islamic fundamentalism are the fundamentals of Islam.
This idea that you're equally against all religions, you're against Jainism, literally a religion of peace, about not hurting another soul. You can be extreme in that. That's a good thing to be extreme in. Although actually not so much, because what if someone attacks you? Self-defense, I believe you defend yourself. But that's a whole other point. Let's just say it might be bad for them, but they're not going to be hurting anyone. Because the entire religion is about not hurting anything. Not all. Not all. That's the argument you bring. That's a shout out to you, Devin.
In Cologne, which we don't even understand exactly what it was that happened.
Yeah, I mean, you're the one who said no one's been arrested yet, right?
Yeah, right?
So we don't even know what the facts are yet. This story is still developing. We're still trying to figure out who the perpetrators are. But look, the point that I'm trying to make, and I want to reiterate it so people understand very clearly what I'm trying to say. If poll numbers indicate that a certain culture believes women need to be subservient to men, that doesn't mean that there's a direct correlation or any causation indicating that they are advocates of rape or or in favor of rape or even people who excuse rape. That's the point that I'm trying to make. Those are two completely different things. Do some men who believe women should be subservient end up sexually assaulting women? I'm sure there's some percentage, right?
Right.
But I don't think that there's any type of correlation there. And I think that correlation is being made online by bigots and fearmongers, so we don't allow refugees into our country, and it's enraging me right now.
And so a lot of I've read a lot of writing from feminists in Germany about this, and what they're all saying is that, wow, it's really weird to see the right wing finally stick up for rape victims, and it took Arabs for them to finally figure out that rape is bad and that it's not the woman's fault.
Dear feminists, who are you? Who are you and what do you stand for? Who do you stand for? Are you going to stand up for women? Stand up for women. None of this intersectional bullshit. No more. Feminism is not about which group is the most oppressed. It's not about stack identity politics. It is about women. Protecting women. Why are you working against yourselves? Why are you working against yourselves? It just doesn't... It doesn't make sense. It's beyond frustrating to watch. You're a disgrace. If you're a feminist, whoever just made that statement that Jimmy just said, you're a disgrace. You're a disgrace to my gender. And you're a disgrace to feminism. And everything that our mothers, our grandmothers fought for, you're a disgrace to it. And you're a disgrace to all the women who suffer under Islam. You are a disgrace. You are a disgrace to the Saudi Arabian princess in this book who had to go all her life being subservient to men. What is it to be free? What is it to be free? Have you ever just stood outside in the rain or whatever, it's windy, and you're either running or you're just head to the sky and you feel the wind in your hair or you feel the water, I mean, whatever it is. To be free is a wonderful feeling that all humans are entitled to. But because of the misfortune of where they were born and the religion that they were born into, these women do not get to experience that freedom. It's a human right. They're being denied their rights as human beings. Don't stand up for these men. Stand up for the women. All women.
So that's another thing I think that people are overlooking too. And I'm against religion. I'm against Islam. I'm against Christianity. I'm against all of it because I think it's superstition and it's corrosive to all cultures, right? But at the same time, as a progressive, I can't allow one group of people to be demonized more than another group of people based on scapegoating, right?
Based on scapegoating? They did it. They did it. They raped these women. You're not going to allow them to be demonized more than other groups of people? Condemn them in your own right. Just because one person takes one position that you don't agree with, that doesn't mean that in order to combat their opinion, that you have to be all the way over there. Take your own opinion. So whether you fall here, just because they're over here doesn't mean you have to be over there. And if you are just naturally over there, whether or not they are there, you're insane. You are an insane human being who has very little regard for the safety of these women, who has very little empathy for them. A reasonable human being is right here. Understanding, of course, not all, but also understanding that cultural differences does translate into tangible differences. You can't pretend that it exists in a vacuum, that, they have a different culture, but it doesn't actually affect their actions. It has a direct effect on their actions. Are you pretending that where you are from, where you are born, has no effect on who you are as a human being? It absolutely does. It absolutely does.
But
And when the base beliefs seem very similar. I mean, how many times have we had in conservative churches in America explicitly saying, including politicians, women are subservient to men?
And not only that,
that's the belief.
That's the belief.
Thankfully, not of that many Americans anymore. Thankfully. But that's a stated belief of a lot of Christian churches, of conservative Christian churches.
Not only that, we have done stories, and please look through our archives and find it on our YouTube channel, because you will find it, where Christian commentators will openly and explicitly say, you cannot rape your wife if you're married to her, right?
That's true.
There's no such thing as rape in a marriage. Okay, so there
and a lot
are
of laws upheld that.
First of all, I can point out two things with this. One is one that I don't really care about. I don't care to make this point, but those are two different things. Like raping the wife, that's one person. You can only have one wife. So it's only one person being affected. That is still a gross thing, so I absolutely am not defending it. My point is that you still, from that belief, you wouldn't get what happened in Cologne. You wouldn't get that from that one viewpoint, and it's a really messed up viewpoint. And so I don't want to in any way be defending that. It's just you still wouldn't get the equivalency that Anna is looking for. My other point. How common is that? That's an outlier thought. That's an outlier opinion. I do not believe that the majority of Americans hold that viewpoint. And why are we even talking about Americans? This is Cologne. We are talking about Germany. You are incredibly geocentric. You're a geocentrist. This is geocentrism. It makes no sense that when we're talking about an event in Germany, you're talking about what our right-wingers and outliers believe in this country. It makes no sense. It's stupid. You look like an idiot. I used to think that you weren't an idiot, but you kind of seem like one. That or you're an intentionally deceptive and manipulative human being. I'm really disappointed, Anna. I used to think very differently of you. Very differently. But you're just a disappointment.
There are all sorts of fundamentalists, whether it's Christian or Muslim, that have very problematic points of views when it comes to women, okay? I think it's important to assimilate if they're gonna, migrate to a different country. I have no problem with that whatsoever. The only thing that I have a problem with is using generalizations for an entire group of people.
The only thing you have a problem with is using generalizations for an entire group of people? First of all, no one on this panel said all. No one. That is something you made up. In fact, you even acknowledged that Elliot wasn't saying that. But you're creating a straw man, and then you're attacking that straw man. Talk to the people who are actually on this panel. Actually talk to Elliot. Actually engage with the facts and the statistics that he brought up. Engage with it. Don't dismiss it. And that's all you're angry about. That's all. Shouldn't you be angry first at what these men did? Oh my God. You care more about the potential victims that could come out of this based on the actions of Muslims. You're worried about Muslims being victims because people are more angry at Muslims because of what Muslims did. You're more angry about what could be instead of what was. Instead of the actual victims. More concerned about potential victims than the actual victims. Congratulations. You're a great, great human being. You're so perceptive. You're so thinking and empathetic, and you're just really, I'm scared for, what happened to those women was awful. Don't get me wrong, those men, they deserve to go to jail, but I'm such a kind and thinking human being that I'm also going to be concerned about the potential victims in the future. I'm such a good human being. I feel it. I feel it in my heart. It's such a trained reaction. It's not an actual human reaction. It's trained. You have been trained to have that reaction.
And using instances like the New Year's Eve attack, to make a statement about an entire religion, an entire group of people. I want to help people in need. Like that's my biggest issue, right? And when look, my dad was born in Syria. My dad could have stayed in Syria, and he could have been a victim of all this, right? And the thought of the United States saying no to Syrian victims, I don't know. It makes me incredibly emotional and incredibly angry, because I think it goes against what this country's about, okay? My people were slaughtered by the Turks, okay? Which is why there are Armenians throughout this entire world. They're part of the diaspora. My family is part of the diaspora, okay? And the idea of the U.S. not allowing my family to come into this country angers me, right? And if they were to look at them and say, you guys are terrorists, you guys are different, you guys are foreigners, we're not going to let you in because we're afraid of you, I mean, that goes against what this country's about.
Here we have it. A Jewish soul. That's what we're getting here. What do you think? Yeah. My people were refugees too. Here's where I can relate to you, Anna. Of course, there's always that feeling that when you see someone in a similar situation, empathy is selfish. The more similar someone is to you, the closer that they are, the more we are capable of empathizing with them. In that way, empathy is selfish. Then again, technically, philosophically speaking, all actions are selfish. It is true. When you see a little girl your age, I can't really say I'm a little girl anymore, but if I were to see a girl my age, had a similar life, and something terrible happens to her, I relate more because it's easier to fit into those shoes. What also has to be recognized at the same time is that there really is a danger that cannot be ignored. Because I value my survival. I value my life, and I value my family's life. I do not want to live in a less safe world because of my generosity or my country's generosity. And to tell other people that they're morally inferior to you because they're not willing to sacrifice their well-being, their family's well-being, their society, their community's well-being, to tell those people that they're morally inferior, I think is wrong. And it's an emotional response. That is an emotional reaction when you hear refugee. But these aren't the Armenians, and these aren't the Jews. They're not escaping people who are persecuting them because they are those things. Sometimes what's right doesn't feel right. But we have to be understanding enough and unselfish enough to ignore certain feelings, to do the right thing, and to do it for the right reason. Now, I am of the opinion that, and I've said this before, that women, children, fine. Single young men, no. And I'm still of that opinion. But you cannot pretend that these are the Armenians or that these are the Jews who belong to tiny, tiny minorities that are being persecuted because they belong to that small, tiny minority. Don't pretend it's the same.
So that's the reason why I get emotional.
And, you know, now there are groups of angry mobs in Germany attacking Muslims and people who they think are Muslims in Germany.
Yeah.
So is that their culture? Why are they so violent? You know,
and look, we've had in America after 9/11, after any terror attack, it happened in Paris as well. When these things happen, immediately people go out and generally they end up for some reason targeting Sikhs. I don't know why. Every time.
No one should be going out there and attacking people just because they belong to that group in response to what members of that group did. That is not what any of us are saying. Can you acknowledge that?
They end up beating up a Sikh.
Yes, this is what,
but they go and they commit hate crimes.
Yeah,
and
Sikhs.
Yeah, and especially, I think historically, and I think it's totally true of this channel, which has been around since before the Iraq War happened. We knew when we started doing this, when we went in there, we invaded multiple countries, we occupied them, we killed tens or hundreds of thousands of people or were complicit in their killing, that we were creating an absolute mess that was going to destroy not just their lives, but that it was going to spread and it was going to cause damage. And now we see that.
Are you saying we knew this was going to happen and that if we knew and we still took the actions that we did, then we purposely created what we see today? Or is that what you're trying to imply? God damn. I think I've been deteriorating throughout this process. I think you can hear it in my voice a little bit. Just listening to these people drives me nuts. I'm insane. I can't. Ugh.
We see that governments have been destabilized throughout the region because we're there and because we're bombing the shit out of them. And now those people, some of them are having to flee. And for us to say, no, you can't come here, your country is shit, but you got to deal with it. When we help to cause that situation, I think that that's one of the things that makes us hardest to accept. It's not just that it's the most supposedly religious people in America who are saying, no, we can't help out the downtrodden and those who are fleeing war and just want peace and all that. It's that they were also the ones who were most vociferously supportive of every one of these foreign adventures that has contributed in various ways to the situation we have today. It's like they smashed all of that shit, and now some of it has come back, and they're like, that's incredibly frustrating.
Blaming the victim. I don't know about you guys, but TYT, goddamn, they're into some victim blaming. The roosters are coming home to nest, according to these folks. Ugh. You know what I think of you, TYT? I think very, very, very little of you. I think very lowly of you. I have a very, very low opinion of everything you do. I don't like you. I despise you. I want nothing to do with you. Except for that's not true. Because I'm speaking out against you. And I'm a Jew. And I'm gonna argue. I do.
How many roads must a man walk down before they call him a man? How many seas must a white dove sail before she sleeps in the sand? How many times must the cannonballs fly before they're forever banned? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many years must a mountain exist before it is washed to the sea? How many years can some people exist before they're allowed to be free? How many times can a man turn his head and pretend that he just doesn't see? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. How many times must a man look up before he can see the sky? one man have before he can hear people cry? How many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. The answer